Hey everybody, we're Shayem and Chris, and this is Fan Team Radio. And we're back after a Mexico Grand Prix 2024. Chris, what's up?
Yeah, what a crazy race. It was a
And I say
battle.
because that first turn got him again.
Yeah, I mean, that first turn is it's pretty brutal. I mean, it's to be expected. It's a long run down to turn one, so there's a lot of speed and aggression from everybody. But yeah, this race was kind of a battle the entire time, or at least for the first third. Well, a lot of crazy interactions going on. Beginning with that Tsunoda and Albon. I'm not exactly sure who I think is at fault here, but you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so they chalked it up to a racing incident, which I don't disagree with. Essentially, yeah, let's break it down a bit. So, all the cars came off the blocks. Sergio was way ahead of his block, but we'll touch on that in just a second. So, going into turn one, Tsunoda and Albon are right next to each other. Albon is in the middle, Tsunoda is to the left of him, and to the right of Albon is Pierre Gasly, who has no idea that Tsunoda is coming two cars to the left up the outside lane. As they get squeezed in, as per Pierre squeezes Albon to the left, and Albon does that to Sonoda unknowingly. Sonoda kind of rides up on him. Albon rides up on Sonoda. They make contact. Sonoda literally does a 180 and rides backwards all the way into the wall. It looked cool in slow motion, but at the end of the day, it's just a racing incident in its purest form. No one really was accounting for people two cars away from them. So it's hard to kind of place blame on any one of them. If I were to place any kind of blame, I'd place it on Lance Stroll just because he was there.
Hey, our boy Lance actually hasn't made too many mistakes recently. Oh, he hasn't made any good moves either, but he's just been kind of there. But did you see that Tsunoda hit a cameraman, or like he hit the camera of the
It
camera?
seemed like it was very, very close. I don't think he actually hit him, but it was very, very close.
Well, I think he did hit the camera, but not the actual person. But that
Oh,
was either way. It was
they got some good footage.
some great footage, but it was crazy. Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll chalk it up to a racing incident. I think it was a little over ambitious from Tsunoda, just a little bit, but ultimately, I don't think he did anything too egregiously wrong. And yeah, just there was a wild Gasly, and Albon had nowhere to go. So it's just unfortunate. I'm always curious how these drivers feel. Like, obviously, it's not good, but you prep all weekend, you do 3 practice sessions, quali, you get yourself up there, and then 10 seconds into the race and you're out, and that's it. It's like it must be the worst feeling in the world just to like sit on the sidelines and do nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just glad it wasn't Hamilton this week. But let's kind of there's going to be two big stories, one on the Red Bull side, and then one on the Ferrari side, if you were to ask me. But let's kind of dissect this first incident a little bit further. So, we talked about this a little bit. The incumbents Lawson and Colapinto coming into both VCarb and Williams, and really making some positive waves. In the start of this race, before Lawson and Colapinto ended up kind of near the back of the race, they were having a really, really strong race. And it got me thinking, like, what does this, like, if Lawson and Colapinto didn't, just kind of stayed the course, I guess, what would have the indication been, or what are the implications for Sonoda and Albon? Like, are they now in jeopardy of losing the D1 positions, maybe midway through next year? Do you think that's still a possibility? I know Colapinto's leaving and Carlos Sainz is coming in, but as things currently stand, Sonoda and Albon are the D1 drivers for their respective teams. But do you think this upcoming season might be the first season in the last three seasons where they might lose that position to other drivers?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a thought. While while Lawson and Colin both have seemingly performed above expectations, like I still feel like your inexperience is going to shine through at times, and I think it did a little bit in their collision in this race. Both being a little bit too over aggressive and overzealous, and part of experience is getting your car across the line in one piece. And if you have too many incidents like that, you're not going to. You're eventually going to make mistakes, have accidents, and cost you lap time. So
I mean,
I think
I don't disagree with that, but I do disagree with the fact that it seems a little dismissive, Chris. Because I feel like these guys are coming creeping up in a way that we just don't want to give credence to. But much like how Oscar Piastri kind of snuck up on Norris and got the best out of Norris, I'm saying either going into next year, Albon and Tsunoda are going to have to pick up the pace and execute, not just execute by getting the car across the line, but they need to do it in a very, very, uh, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess formidable fashion. Because Lawson and Colapinto, and then I know when Signs comes in, he's not going to be any kind of pushover either. But these guys are kind of exposing Tsunoda and Albon in ways that lesser driver pairings haven't had a chance to do in the recent past for these guys. So I'm almost of the mind that Colapinto, if he gets a shot at at F1 again, but definitely Carlos Sainz coming in for Williams, and then Liam Lawson kind of being the mainstay for the D2 position at VCarb. I think they're both going to potentially take over Albon and Sonoda shine.
yeah, I mean,
Carlos might do it almost immediately.
it's definitely possible. And I listen. I think next year is probably going to be Yuki Tsunoda's last, especially if
Like ever.
yeah, potentially. I mean, like he really hasn't shown amazing promise. Now that being said, he is in a V carb, and he's getting frustrated. And I don't know if you followed all these rumors, but I was going to get to it a little bit later, but we'll just touch on it now. Like Perez is starting to be rumored that he's last race is next race, and for the first time ever, Christian Horner was dismissive about Checo's future and didn't confirm and be like, no, he has a 2-year contract. He's with us. And the Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim, he admitted that the I
They're going
forget
to pull their sponsorship.
to pull their sponsorship and stuff like that. So the writing is on the wall for Checo, and there's like rumors circulating that Pinto is being bought out for either potential Red Bull or V carb, and then like Lawson moves up and Pinto gets a seat. And if I was Yuki Tsunoda and I've been fighting for this team for years, and this guy like comes in, races a couple races, and gets put into the Red Bull seat, like I I don't know. I don't know what I would do, but I probably wouldn't race for that team anymore. And I don't know if he has anywhere else to go. But
Yeah, I mean he could always go to Aston Martin.
that's actually Honda will push for that because they've been pushing Red Bull. Obviously, Red Bull's been ignoring, but Honda's going to push for him to be at Aston Martin. Now, they're never going to get rid of Lance Stroll, and Fernando Alonso is locked in a contract for the time being. So we'll see if that's even possible.
Yeah. Well, let's use that as a jumping off point for Perez. So, as I mentioned earlier, he had a 5 second penalty for starting over the line, which to me still seems kind of ridiculous, given the fact that these guys have a lot of guiding markers for where their car should be. Also, does the radio not work when you're in pit lane to start the race? Like, can the is it like not allowed for the radio driver to be like, hey, dude, like you're way over the line, you need to like back up a bit? Like, is that
Actually,
not?
I actually have to look at the rule book, but I believe, and I could be wrong here, so if I was speaking out of my ass, I apologize. But I believe that that is in fact true. I don't think any radio communication is allowed to happen to the drivers until the race has begun,
I
including the
guess I
formation.
yeah, I guess it keeps them from cheating on the start because they you remember I think it was like '96 they had gotten they had caught all the cheaters because of a signal that the team radio
Oh,
sent.
that was so. What they were doing, for anybody who doesn't know who's listening, the drivers they figured out the timing sequence, or the teams did, and so they would put an audio beep into the ear of like a DRS beep, but they would put that beep in to let the drivers know that it was going to be like an extra beep before the lights go out because they knew exactly when the lights were to go out because they figured out the algorithm. So
Yeah,
the F-
it exposed
the
all
FAA
the
changed it, the algorithm, and so all the teams that were cheating put a beep into the driver's ear and they launched off the line, but the lights didn't go
yeah, that's fucking hilarious. That video lives rent free in my head. That is so fucking funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Perez gets a 5 second penalty like off the get go. Home race looks like a dunce. Just was set up for failure, quite honestly. I mean, let's kind of dissect the battle that happened between Verstappen and Norris, and then some of the rest of the fallout of the Red Bull race for both drivers. So on lap 10, Verstappen drops an F bomb. Regardless of whatever the fucking rules Mohammed bin Salam wanted to put in place, uh, his batteries his battery's just not kind of there to let him charge ahead. And then he gets into a dogfight with Norris, with Leclerc shortly behind him. And then on lap 10, Verstappen lunges and drives Norris off the road twice, which allows Leclerc to kind of just come in and swoop up P2 position. Um, the second time, which Verstappen also runs off the road himself. So he gets a 10-second penalty marker there. And then later on in the race, Verstappen gained a position on Lance Stroll by going off the track. Something that I never thought I'd say in my life is Max Verstappen needed to go off track to gain a position on Lance Stroll, but
Is
it happened.
that what the penalty was for?
Yeah.
I thought it was the same incident as Norris because he gained a position on
So
Norris.
that's interesting. So I thought that too when I first saw it. Then I watched the reruns of the race afterwards, and I was like, no, they actually the second penalty was for Norris, but it got me thinking that maybe he should have had a 30-second penalty altogether because he gained a position on Stroll, didn't give it back, went off the road, and then in lap 10, two times back to back, he ran Norris off the road to gain a position as well. Even though Norris I'm on Norris's side on this one, he was ahead on the apex on both turns, definitely the first one at least, and 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 yeah, I thought it should have been a 30-second penalty after kind of watching the rerun of the race.
I mean, I don't disagree with any of the penalties given to Max. He did dive pretty hard, a bomb onto Norris, and especially the second incident with Norris, he basically did a online lobby rendition of some crazy pass attempt where he had too much speed and was never going to make the corner. Like that being said, Verstappen knows these rules and he knows what's going on, and he knows he has the ability to basically take these penalties and stoke up the damage. I mean, look at where he was when he came out after the penalties. It was in like 15th or 16th, right in front of Perez, still in front of Perez
Yeah,
after
that's
the
fucking wild.
penalties.
That's so
And then he ends
sad.
up in P6. So he prevents Norris essentially from having the capability of winning the race by delaying him and causing a battle, and then ends up in P6 anyways and keeps the point differential between him and Norris below what Norris needs to do to win the championship. Why wouldn't Max do that? I mean, they asked him in the post race interview, are you going to change the way you drive? And he essentially smirked and, in between the lines, like, fuck no, I'm not. I'm going to do it again. Like,
He's going back to his old ways, man. Without a super dominant car, he just has to reserve back to super aggressive driving.
I mean, he has to. His goal is to win the championship. That's the only goal. At the end of the rule book, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is who names gets written on that line at the end of the year. And if they're going to put a rule book into place that allows him to do this and only get 10-second penalties, he's going to take it. I mean, look at what happened with Hamilton and Verstappen and Silverstone 21. Hamilton shunted, Max at Cop's corner and, got well, it was either a 5 or 10 second penalty, and you know, still ends up winning the race. Like there's basically no punishment in that scenario, and there's no punishment in this scenario. So if
Well,
they
the
want,
punishment. Well, he got punished in this scenario. He got 10-second penalty. I think it's in stark contrast to last race when that one was a little bit more heavily contested because it was hard to tell who was kind of at the. I mean, Max was at the apex going into that turn in at Coda, but they didn't slap him on the wrist or anything. And I think the drivers had a meeting with the FIA to reconsider the rules on how they dictate who gets to the apex when, because you're essentially incentivizing lunging regardless of what the risk factor is. And in doing so, you're potentially unfairly, going off track to gain a position. So I think the drivers actually had a meeting. I think I read about the drivers having a meeting with the FIA to talk more about that. But if they did, you see the results taking place right now, uh, where Verstappen's getting these picking up these time penalties that you just never saw from earlier. And then in lap 18, Perez gets into it with Lawson, and Lawson ends up winning. Somehow Perez makes contact but doesn't get damage on his car in that stint. But I think Lawson also flicked him off, and Lawson also dropped the F bomb. So a couple of F bombs being dropped in this race. I love it because it just shows that it's a slap in the face for Mohammed bin Sulayem, who really wanted to make this a family sport, whatever the fuck that means. But yeah, this entire race was kind of the undoing of Red Bull in a kind of way, and maybe it's it's an indicator of things to come for this team. But what do you think Red Bull is left off after this race? They're third in the constructors championship, and mathematically speaking, it's going to be kind of hard for Lando to make up the 49-point gap or 50-point gap to Max. But when it comes to the constructors, they were in a very steady position. Perez's just kind of lackluster performance throughout the entire year, coupled with Max's recent decline in performance, puts them in third. I mean, what do you think? Where do you think this team goes from here?
I mean, first and foremost, as much as I hate to say it and be a negative Nancy, like Red Bull just has to get rid of Perez. I mean, he's been holding up that seat for a long time, and he's had constant issues over the last 3 years, and they've been getting steadily worse consistently. So I think that they have to get rid of him and put a driver who is either as hungry and competitive as Max or someone who's a good number two. Like I know, I'm biased or whatnot, but hell, put Valtteri Bottas in the seat. He's like literally the best number two driver of all time. He was Lewis's, god teammate who like couldn't challenge him but could take the car really fast around the track.
But you think Valtteri still has it in him to drive a subpar Red Bull and do the same thing that he did at Mercedes?
I don't think it matters. Like, give him 1 year or, the same reason why I wanted Sainz in that seat. Like, he's going to do better than Perez. But if I guess if they don't, be ruthless and do what you did with Gasly and Albon and cut him. But I don't think putting Lawson in that seat yet. I don't think he deserves that seat yet, and I don't know about Yuki either. I just don't know who you put in that seat right now to change out Perez. And what there's 4 races left. I guess I don't know who you'd put in that seat who also is sitting in that seat next year. So, but
I mean, I think you make a good point with them considering Franco. It's something, and it's a weird season where 2025 is not a whole lot's changing. 2026, people are kind of hitting the reset button. How do you deal with this kind of this season that could McLaren's probably going to run away with, or Ferrari,
I
in
mean, that's
2025.
why I would consider putting someone like Valtteri in the seat because what you want is a driver capable in 26 and, and you can legitimately give Valtteri a 1 year contract and just be like, "This is your last year, bro." Like, it is what it is. But uh, unless they have a really good idea of the rookie they want to put in, there's the F2 driver in the Red Bull Academy. Uh, I don't want to mispronounce his name. I think you know what I'm talking about. Like Hadj, what's his name?
Hadjar, Isaac Hadjar.
Yeah, Isaac Hadj. Like, if you want to put him in the seat, give him a test for 4 races, see how he does, and then figure out your
Yeah,
shuffle.
Liam wouldn't like that. That would be.
I mean, you know what? Like, listen, I liked Liam when he took over for Daniel when he broke his wrist. There's something, I don't know whether it's just personality bias or whatnot. I am at the moment not liking him. Even though like I
Mm,
don't really like Perez.
yeah, talk to me about that. Why do you not like Liam? Is it because he flicked off Perez?
No, like because I don't like Perez and I think I should want that. I just getting this cocky attitude from him, like I should have always been in this seat. I deserve Red Bull. Like fuck you guys. And I'm like, pump the brakes, bro. Like you're barely in the sport. It's a ruthless thing. Nick DeVries outshined people, and then the realities came to town. Like you have plenty of time to show that you're a mid tier driver, and until you're you know doing the incapable things that Max and Leclerc and other people did early on in their careers, like be grateful. I don't know. He just seems very cocky to me whenever he talks in interviews and stuff, and I'm like, I feel like he hasn't deserved it yet.
I
But
mean, I get that. Not everyone can be as cool, calm, and collected as Oscar Piastri, but I always thought New Zealanders were also a little bit cooler than Aussies. But I guess in this instance, they're really flipping that on its head.
uh, maybe it's just like I miss Danny Rick a little bit. I don't know, but
Yeah.
you know.
I don't really
Anyways,
miss Danny Rick a whole lot, but that's the topic for another conversation.
yeah, just
Uh,
go back to what you to go
yeah.
back to where we started. I just think Red Bull have to get rid of Perez, and then they just need to take a step back and like figure out what their plan is because they lost Adrian, and if they don't make big changes, they're gonna lose Max too. And let's face it, they're a marketing company, and they get big dollars because they have people like Max, and they're a strong team. And if they keep bleeding talent, not only technical but in their drivers, then their future is very, very grim. So, I, my prediction, and I made this prediction with a few other people as well, is that Red Bull will fight for podiums next year, but they will not be in the fight for any championship next
All right. That's a hot take. Not too hot, kind of lukewarm, but it's a
year. Yeah,
take.
lukewarm take.
Yeah, lukewarm take. That's what we're all about here on Fan Team Radio. All right, so let's look at the other side of the pond. Ferrari, they just had a really great weekend. They had great straight line pace throughout the entire race. Signs more so than Leclerc, but Leclerc, had a lot of opportunistic advances, just kind of by the virtue of Norris and Verstappen fighting as much as they were. Um, by lap 32, man, Sainz is 31 seconds ahead of Leclerc. And then by lap 48, Leclerc maintains about a 4.6-second lead on Norris, and Sainz is still maintaining a 6.4-second lead on Leclerc. That's due to a pit stop that Ferrari forced Sainz to take, even though he didn't want to do that. Um, Norris bridges the gap to Leclerc to zero point 0.7 seconds by lap 62, so it becomes a very close race. And Leclerc just goes off the road. And I think at the second to last turn, and Norris just overtakes P2 by lap 63. And Leclerc ends up finishing in P3, but he's 31 seconds behind Norris. I don't know. First of all, I don't know how Leclerc maintained his car after that almost spin out. I don't know how he maintained P3. I guess it just goes to show you how much further ahead they were than Mercedes, the Mercedes couple this week. But Ferrari had, even when they were making mistakes, they had great straight line speed. Makes me happy for Lewis for going there next year. Makes me sad for Carlos because he's going to Williams. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Ferrari this week?
Like, listen, I don't know where or what that they did or changed. And it is very possible that everybody else just made their cars worse because everyone was bringing upgrades and Ferrari did not. But they've just been on point. Like They've been having decent strategy. Their pace is really good. The drivers are pretty good. Leclerc almost killed himself into the wall pretty late in the race, but
Yeah.
you know, uh, I, I'm excited for our future. But I don't want to put the cart before the horse because you know, uh,
Is that a Ferrari joke?
well, I guess I made one, but I read a funny joke earlier about a different, but I'm going to relate it here to this situation and just say Ferrari is like a Netflix show, and you basically always have to wait for next season. It's like, it's like Ferrari will always get this close, and it's like next year will be our year, and it's a rinse and repeat story. So I'm excited about next year because I truly and ultimately believe it will be Ferrari versus McLaren, with the second race being Mercedes versus Red Bull. But I think the championship will ultimately hinder on Ferrari versus McLaren. I just think they're the two more capable teams, and then we're going to have Norris and Piastri versus Leclerc and Hamilton. And the teams will have to figure out who early on is in that race, and hopefully potentially do D1 drivers so that they can have a championship battle like we did in 21. But I'm excited for Ferrari. I do feel bad for Sainz, and I wish you know Helmet and Christian would just dump a truckload of cash into Red Bull and buy his contract from Vowels and just put him in that Red Bull seat. I don't think that's going to happen,
Hell
but
no.
anyways, so I'm excited about Ferrari. Like I want to see a fight for Hamilton's eighth. I think it would be fantastic, and I almost would want Lewis to retire if he hit his eighth. He probably wouldn't at this point, considering the deal he got with Ferrari. But it would at least be nice to see him fighting for the eighth. So I'm excited about Ferrari. I do feel bad for Carlos. I was kind of sad that whole time that he was about to win this race, and I was like, not like this.
I mean, that's what happens when you just have nothing to lose. Like you're just gonna put your all out there, and Carlos is the kind of guy that he wears. He's a friendly dude, but he wears his emotions on his sleeves, and he he just puts it out there. So I have a lot of respect for that guy. Um, let's turn our winners, losers, and hot seats. I think there's a lot to talk about there. So it's Alonso's 400th outing in F1, which is the most, I guess, ever by a driver, and it's pretty impressive.
Ever.
Uh, so I'll put him both in my winners column and my losers column. Winners column because 400 is an impressive number to reach. Losers column because his car just pooped out on him and he had to retire the race. So not like he was going out there and making the most of his 400th race, but the fact that he even just got there is quite impressive. Um, and then I have the entire Ferrari unit in my winner circle as well. I think they had a strong outing last week. I think Chris, me and you predicted Carlos is going to be in the top three this week. So at least that leg of our parlay hit.
Yeah.
And then Haas. Let's go look at Haas real quick. So they both got top 10. What was it? K Mag got in at seventh, and Nico got in at ninth. They were split by Oscar Piastri. I mean, hell of a performance for both Haas drivers, and I think that they're now what is it P6 in the Constructors Cup, only behind Aston Martin, but they've probably made the most improvement outside of McLaren between last year and this year. Would you agree with that? Would you say that's too hot of a take?
No, I mean, we talked about it a little bit before, but Haas is definitely on my radar for kind of most improved organization over the last year. I mean, as much as we all loved Gunther and we've said it before, he just wasn't a great leader. And, now that they have solid leadership, they're getting investment behind the team, they're making big moves. Like, I'm excited to see where they are next year. Like, I don't think they're going to be fighting at the top of the field next year, but a potential for 26, just depending on engines. But
I just hope Esteban doesn't fuck it up for them.
yeah, I mean, it's very possible that Esteban just kills Ollie Behrman every week into the side of the wall. But you know, next year there will be a lot to read into next year about the driver pairing, how they're going to work together, and the futures of those drivers. But the organization itself are massive step up. Super proud of the team, and I'm actually super proud of K Mag. Like I put him in my winner circle specifically because like what a great race. Again, he just like you mentioned with Carl Sainz, he has nothing to lose. He's out of F1 at the end of this year, so he's going to be putting in some stellar performances, and then I'm glad to see it. It's a good way to go out. So
Yeah, I think just having such a performance this year as a team really helps solidify their top line kind of investors like MoneyGram. Remember when they were under Ural Kali and they were getting money from the Russian oligarch, and then the Ukraine thing happened, and they just could not find another title sponsor to save their lives, and somehow they were able to pull together enough money to keep themselves on track. I don't think they have that anymore. And I think once you're out of that pit of despair and stress, you can really start making some cool things happen, and your drivers can also kind of reap the benefits of that kind of relief. So I think Haas is positioning themselves in a way that, quite frankly, is stress free. It's probably a pretty cushy gig right now to be over there at Haas. I think Io Komatsu is doing some really fantastic stuff. And then finally, on my winner circle, I have Hamilton. He finally was able to overtake Russ throughout the course of the entire race. Russ kind of put it to Lewis, and I think by lap 65 or something like that, Hamilton was able to finally find some space to separate himself from Russell. So it's not a top three finish for Hamilton, but kind of just in terms of how poorly he did last week and got beached on the sands, and then this week, he was really taking it to Russ and kind of beating him there.
yep, I totally agree with you. Um,
Let's go through your winners. It seems like there's a little bit of overlap, but you definitely have someone that I didn't have on my
yeah,
consideration.
I put Lando on there only because he had a really strong finish into the race, and I think the only reason why he wasn't able to fight for P1 is because of his battle with Verstappen. And the McLaren has shown amazing pace towards the end of the race. I don't know whether it's tire management or what, but this is the second or third time in the last few races in which Lando was making a charge up the field towards the end of the race. And he also, he I don't think that there's a chance that he can get WDC unless Max has reliability or crashes out. However, he's showing that if the race was just slightly a little bit closer, that it would be a really good fight to the end because he needs a lot. I think he needed 12 or 11 points per race, and he got 10 points on Max here, so it wasn't quite enough, but it's still an amazing performance. And if he had that little extra mentality and didn't let things get to him so much, he probably would be very close to the battle with him. So it definitely makes for a more interesting year next year, knowing that Norris will take all this experience from this year and hopefully apply it in a much more focused and direct way next year and fighting for the championship. So I think ultimately, I think he had you know good damage limitation for what it was, and he could have easily crashed out with Max, but he kept it on track and passed Leclerc and got second place. So I think he ultimately had a pretty decent weekend, uh, just not quite what he needs to win the championship.
All right, let's start with losers. Who you got for your losers?
I, I literally just put Lawson on there because you know he had a good he had a good qualification session. Well, not really. I mean, I guess he was P12, but like he ultimately ended up in 16th because of the incident he had. Actually, I want to kind of go back and rewatch the incident. I don't really feel like there was not that many laps left. There wasn't enough damage. I mean, we saw years ago Hamilton was able to take the car around with his like front wing flapping on the side, and same with I think Leclerc and Sainz. I think multiple drivers have done this. K Mag did it every other race. I don't think there was as much damage as they needed to actually repair that wing, which I think lost them a lot of time.
No, I
But
think like the front left side of his wing were just completely like shattered. So it probably wasn't helping him like
I need to go
turn the
back and see that,
corners.
but if that's the case, then it is what it is. But ultimately, I think Liam's just had, he's ruffled the feathers. He's ruffled all the Alonso and Sainz and Perez, and you know,
Yeah, he really doesn't like Spanish drivers.
he doesn't like it. But ultimately, this guy, like, maybe he'll end up in the Red Bull seat. I mean, it's a ruthless sport, but he seemingly pissed off Christian Horner. He got called to his office for the language and flipping him off. Like, you probably shouldn't do that to the team that you want to race for. Like, you could be mad at the guy, but publicly doing that on camera is not going to be a good look. But so I think I just put him on my losers because ultimately he ended second to dead last, and obviously ruffled some feathers. So I think he needs to refocus and just try to put in the best performances that he can week after week, and earn it on track and try to keep it clean. But maybe he's taking after the Max Verstappen school of race hard and succeed. We'll see.
All right, well, fair point. Your hate for Lawson's really showing through, Chris.
No, but it is.
I got a couple people on my losers list. So we talked about Alonso already. Just a tough stint. Couldn't finish his 400th race. Everyone was kind of, you see that big ass banner of Fernando Alonso that they posted up in Mexico City in the arena.
I think that
Uh,
was digital, but I'm not sure.
is that no? That does look like that was real, dude. I think that was real.
I that Ari was looking at that, was like, "Is that real?" And I was like,
I think that was real. Like maybe I'm wrong. It looked real as hell to me.
"It did look
Um,
real," but I think it was.
yeah, yeah. I think it was real. I think it was real. I don't think they would CGI that. But yeah, imagine like if it was real and you're driving up to that, like after like a couple laps, your car just stalls. You're like, fuck, like this is embarrassing. Not as embarrassing as what the hell Perez did last year at Mexico, but definitely a strong second. And also just in the greater scheme of things, Alonso just not been having a great year. It's starkly different than last year when the Aston Martin started the year just like getting P3s. Remember, he's constantly just getting P3s, and then he just kind of pooped out. I put Yuki Tsunoda and Alex Albon both in my loser circle. Both are starting to kind of, like I said, they're starting to show their wear and tear, even though they're not that old. I think it's a testament to these younger drivers that are coming in and just putting everyone on notice. And then Checo, um, I mean, come on, man! Like it's your home race. You started off poorly. You get into a fight with a kid essentially that's in the second team. Uh, it's essentially the P2 driver, or sorry, the D2 driver of Red Bull getting to a fight with the D2 driver of AlphaTauri. It could have been anyone else, but this was just a bad look. And Perez kind of has this thing where he shrugs things off. He'll be like, "Oh, this isn't good," or "This isn't, this isn't my fault," and then he'll just brush it off. But I think someone like Liam will kind of put his feet to the fire to make sure that he's not becoming too lackadaisical. And then my hot seat. This is the first time I've done this, but I've put Max Verstappen in my hot
I'm really
seat.
curious of what you're going to say here because that's pretty bold, but I want to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to my earlier point about, I guess, both of our earlier points about, you know, he knows the rule books, and a lot of champs have taken advantage of the rule books, and not even champ, maybe even like just really good drivers, right? Um, and I think it triggered a change with the driver, with the entire paddock, to take that feedback to the FIA and say like, hey, like we need to change this. Like it can't just be serving one driver and the rest of us just are kind of shit out of luck, because if we try to pull the same thing, we just don't have enough cachet. Maybe Lewis is the only other person, and maybe Charles sometimes. They're the only drivers that have that kind of cachet to pull some moves like that Max did, especially when it comes to going into or lunging himself into turns. And in doing so, he incurred 20 seconds worth of penalties. That pretty much was the undoing of his race. So yeah, like I don't know, man. I think like this is the first signs of the FIA going against their favoritism for Max, which has been historically documented, and the results are pretty indicative of that. So I don't know. I just think that this is kind of like the start of the end, without being too dramatic about it.
I mean, like I've shared this before, but I have two different thoughts on this and two different sides of the spectrum. But I don't want them to overrule everything, because then you put cost caps in place, you put rules in place, you put all this stuff in place, and every race is just going to be a very unexciting procession around and only passing on straights under DRS and energy conditions. It's just not going to be exciting. If you have situations where people are going to make bold passes, eventually you're going to have incidents that happen like this just out of unintentional. But if all of a sudden the penalties for doing something like that become way too harsh, then no one's going to ever try it, and it's going to be like, well, I will just always pass on the straight under DRS and never do bold deep dives into a turn. So I'm actually in favor of just letting people race hard. And that being said, I definitely don't want people taking advantage, like Max does occasionally, and just breaking the rules consistently. Know you can get away with it. So I don't know where the happy medium is, but I just
Just make
don't
make the car smaller and bring back V10s.
do 100%. Like I get the safety and everything like that, but I'm sure the safety has improved so many other ways. Make the cars smaller, let them go crazy. But I I just like I think back to the old days, and obviously I didn't watch then, so I'm probably just going through highlights in my head. But these guys were so much more aggressive. They were always making crazy passes. Like even in 2021, I believe, when we had that like 4 car race with Leclerc, Hamilton, Alonso, and whoever else, like, and they were just all passing each other. Like, I want crazy shit like that to happen. And sometimes people go off track, sometimes they don't. Like, it just happens. Um, But yeah, ultimately, I agree. I don't want any favoritism for any driver, and I don't want people breaking the rules just because they know they can get away with it. But I just don't want it to become a bore fest either. So hopefully they find a happy medium. But it looks like the drivers have made their stand, and it's 19v1. So see what happens.
Yeah. Well, who's on your hot seat?
You know, I put Perez first and foremost just because he's literally in a hot seat. He might be losing his seat. And I think ultimately that's probably going to happen, whether it happens after Brazil or if it happens in 2025. Um, he's obviously lost his ability to mentally perform. I also don't like how he bitches on the radio about everything. Like no matter if somebody does anything that's not, positive for his race, he's like, what the fuck is this guy doing? And it's like never even that bad. So
Yeah, he was so out of the loop whenever they were like, "Hey, Checo, you got a 5 second penalty." He's like, "What? Why? That's not
yeah,
acceptable." I was like, bro, you're just making yourself look even stupider.
they said you have a 5 second penalty for a false start. He's like, no, it was a great start. It's like,
Yeah, I was just like, God, dude, that's
shut the fuck up, dude. You were out of your box, man. But anyways, and then I have Oscar Piastri on there because for a while there he was taking it pretty hard to Norris, and I don't know whether the maybe he's making some sort of statement with the papaya rules, and I don't think he really likes being told to be D2 to Norris, considering the kind of quality driver he is. But that being said, he has been drastically underperforming for the last 2 or 3 races as compared to Norris. I mean, Norris has shown that McLaren has really good pace, that it's capable of winning races. And, Oscar had a really bad qualification session and then, didn't perform that great in the race either. When Max in a arguably worst car at the moment was able to go from P16 back up to P6. So, I think Oscar is just maybe having a little bit of trouble. Maybe the setups are wrong, whatnot. But, he should be finishing on the podium or near there with Lando. And, hopefully he can regain and find his form, because I'd like to see him at least next year, take the battle to Norris or in front of Norris.
Yeah, I think the papaya rules had a pretty big effect on him, even though he's not trying to say anything. I think he's from the mind, or this is just me speculating, that he's like, look, I get it. You're going to put all of your team's resources behind Lando. I can't say anything about it, but I also don't have to like explicitly help with it. It's not like this is the man that left Alpine and was like, I'm going to go forge my own path with a more credible racing team. Great decision, right? Based on what Alpine is right now. But it's the same attitude of, I'm going to go do this. I just need y'all to build me a car. And then anything that hinders him from going towards the championship is just not going to sit well with him. But I think he's enough of a team player to keep his mouth shut and just do the thing that he has to do to keep in a respectable points position. But knowing that he's not getting the full fledged resource backing that Zach Brown probably promised him to poach from Alpine. Maybe he's just reconsidering a couple of things now, going into 2025 and just getting ready to strike.
Maybe he's going to get that second Red Bull seat, and he was just blowing smoke about.
If that happens, I'll write a novel.
I'll,
Yeah,
I'll, I'll ghostwrite your novel with you. Or what?
yeah. I mean, that was just, yeah. Like if that happens, like that's gonna be like a movie starring Brad Pitt and some other person that could get a movie developed. God, I can't wait for that movie to show up so I can make fun of it. It's gonna
They
be
were
so
still
bad.
filming it. They were doing a scene in Mexico. I thought
God,
they were done.
it's gonna be so bad. I can just feel it, dude. It's gonna be a CIA package. It's not gonna be good.
It's just going to be like, you could probably write the script on a piece of paper right now and be 90 to 95% accurate on everything. Like,
Yeah,
we already know what's going to happen. So it's it's not going to be good, but it's not for us, right? It's for
it's for the kids, like Wu
the
Tang.
kids. Got to think of the kids.
Yeah.
But
All right.
I'm excited for next week though, because I'm pretty sure the battles are going to continue here, and the gloves are going to come off.
I mean, you would think, right? But let's see. So next week we are going to be in Brazil. I mean, if Hamilton can pull something out of his ass, it's going to be awesome.
I
I'm
love how he
really,
did Russell, by the way. But like Ari and I were on, watching and just like screaming, and be like, "Get him!"
yeah. No, he really took it to Russ this week, and
Oh, by the
hey,
way, hold
man,
on.
what?
I want to bring up something real quick. Did you see the thing on Reddit that compared George Russell's career to Danny Rick's career, and it was like it lined up to the T, like even from like spent a couple years at like a junior team, then moved to this team and was like a D2 to this guy, and then that guy went to Ferrari, and then the new young kid came in. Like his career is following Danny Ricks to a T. So in a couple years' time, George Russell's going to be kicked out.
He's going to be kicked out of V Carb.
Yeah.
I hope not, man. I hope he sees his demise coming sooner than Danny Rick did. But yeah, who do you got for Brazil?
Like it's gonna be. It's too hard pressed to not put the Ferraris and McLarens up there. Like it's just, I think that's the situation. But we're gonna do the wild card, and just for you, I'm gonna put Hamilton up in the P3 spot, because I want Hamilton on the podium, and he always does a really good job at Brazil. He's one of the best at that track. I just don't think the Mercedes has the pace to win it, but we'll get him up there on the podium, and then we'll do what the hell, we'll do another 1-2 for Ferrari. So
Honestly, man, that's exactly what I had. I think I'm gonna have Leclerc P1, Sainz P2, Hamilton P3.
let's do it.
Mercedes showed some life today, and hopefully Norris and Verstappen can kind of uh, shun each other out of each other's way.
We
Because
love
I don't see them not throwing elbows if they get a chance to.
Yeah, it'll just be if that is indeed the final podium, it'll be interesting to see where Verstappen and Norris end up. and if Norris will gain any more points on him. Like, what I think will be interesting is if Norris is able to get Max within a race win, and then somehow, some way, he DNFs in the last race, and Norris has to win it to win it. That'd be kind of bonkers, but I think it's very unlikely that Norris does it. But there's still a few more races left, so we'll see.
Yeah,
But
Max will totally crash into him before he allows Norris to gain any more points. Like he already tried it twice this week, so what's to say that he's not going to do it again?
I mean,
Uh,
Max will
yeah,
take over Checo's car and
yeah.
drive into Norris
He'd be
before
like,
he.
"Tell that fucker to get out of his car. I'm doing a pit stop, emergency pit stop. And I'm getting in that car." Cool, but yeah, we got Brazil coming up next week. Then we have, I think, uh, then we have a. Let's see, do we have a break?
Yeah, there should be a break. They're going back to overseas to the Middle East. And, oh no, we get Vegas, but Vegas, I think there's a break.
Yeah,
Is
there's a
there?
break right before Vegas. So the week after, there's going to be a break, and then Vegas is. Wait, maybe I'm tripping.
Vegas is, yeah, there's a couple week break actually. It's a
Yeah, okay, yeah. So there's about 2 week break, and then Vegas is going to be on the 24th, right before Thanksgiving week, and then we
bro. They
go.
go from Vegas to Qatar without a week break. That's going to be a brutal
Yeah,
jet lag.
it's gonna be tough, especially Vegas during the holidays. That's gonna be a nightmare for that airport. Not my problem
Anyway,
though. Yeah,
yeah.
not my
So
problem.
hopefully they don't die in the heat of Qatar again this year. I don't
Yeah,
know if it's going to be hot at this time, but it
probably
was
will.
last
Yeah. Well, all right, Chris. I think that's all we have to say about the Mexico GP 2024. Any
year.
final thoughts before we wrap up here?
Forrest Gump style. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I kind of just wish that Max wasn't so dominant at the beginning of the year because the end of this year would just be absolutely bonkers. But
Yeah.
uh, foreshadowing to next year.
2025 onwards and upwards.
Good luck in Brazil. We will speak with you guys shortly after.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening. Shayem and I would love for you to join the Fan Team Radio community. So please like, subscribe, or follow on your platform of choice, and we'll see you next time.